Hello to all you Patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 230 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, the number one live podcast in Canada. We're recording on May 20th, 2020. As always, my name is Andrew. I'll be your host, and joining me tonight we have a special guest, Brad Manesiak. Yes, I had to practice that. We'd love to hear your feedback about the show. You can visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback or email us by sending your feedback to feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Obviously, you can find the show on the internet anywhere that fine podcasts are sold. If you'd like to follow our social media, you can do that on Facebook at Facebook.com/CanadianPatriotPodcast or Instagram. We're at Canadian Patriot Podcast. And as always, we need your help to support the show. You can become a Patreon at Patreon.com/CPP. For just $1 an episode or more, you get a better quality audio version of the show. And the more that you pledge, the better the rewards are. We'd also like you to show that you're not a communist. You can buy a CPP t-shirt for just $19.99 plus shipping and theft. You visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com and follow the link on the right. That's, as always, going all the way to the right. All right, so we'll get into my favorite segment. It's called What Are We Drinking? It's where I ask the panel what we're drinking. Tonight, the panel is made up of Brad. Brad, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a Rye and Coke tonight.
Rye and Coke. Okay, well, we got to... Brad's new to the show, so we got to be more descriptive. What kind of rye?
It is Alberta Premium. I got to represent, right? Alberta.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, so Alberta Premium Rye and Coke. That's good stuff. And I guess everyone in the firearms community at this point should know who you are. Up until recently, you held the title as having the most signed e-petition in history.
Yeah, short reign, but yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned you're in Alberta. How did you get involved in the firearms industry, the firearms community, and what are you doing right now with firearms? I mean, assuming you're doing anything because of the whole COVID thing. What would you be doing were you not locked in your house?
Well, luckily enough, our range opened up a couple weeks ago. We had some restrictions going out there. They didn't want any more than 15 people on the range at a time, and they didn't want people carpooling and social distancing and all that. And then the weather wasn't really cooperating, but I did get out there 3 or 4 days ago, I think. Did a little bit of blinking, so yeah, that was nice. Yeah.
Is that sort of where you'd say you fit into the firearms community? Is you're a plinker? You're somebody who goes to the range and just target practices, or do you have other aspirations?
Mostly just range activities for the most part, but once in a while I'll go out with the boys and we'll go shoot some gophers or
right on.
Whatever, yeah.
So definitely the recreational firearms owner. And what prompted you to start your e-petition, the E2341, the previously most signed e-petition?
Right. Yeah, I think it was back in December when Bill Blair, I saw him on the news, and he indicated that they might use no IC. So, of course, being familiar with what's going on in New Zealand and how that all went down, I was like, oh, we got to do something about this. So, and there's only so much we can do as a community. I mean, we do outreach and education, and just popped into my mind, I'm going to check this out. I happen to be working up at the oil sands at the time on night shift, and sometimes pretty slow up there on night shift. So I did some research and I looked into it, and it seemed easy enough to get into. So I went on the website, and they have all the instructions there you need to do everything, the whole format, everything that needs to be done. So I started typing away, came up with the proper form and all the information I wanted in there. And then I contacted my MP, Glenn Motz, and I had contacted him before, actually. I invited him out to a local open house we had at our range a couple years ago. And he got back to, or his team got back to me within probably 10 minutes when I messaged. And his coordinator there, Sean, said he's going to be in Raymond, Alberta, doing a rodeo, I think, that day. And he said maybe he can change the schedule or whatever, and maybe he'll be able to make it. So then Glenn himself got back to me. He says, yeah, I'm going to be in the Raymond rodeo, which is like, I don't know, at least 2.5 hours away from Medicine Hat. And he said, "I'll be there. I'll try to make it before it ends at 4 p.m." So away out there, there's a bunch of different dealers and representatives out there. You can try different firearms or whatever. And then I hear my name and I look over, and it's hard to miss Glenn Watts. The guy's like 6'7", 6'8". He's a tall guy.
Okay.
And yeah, I had a good chat with him there. And it was funny. He was just like a rock star. Everybody knew what who he was when he showed up there, and everybody was taking pictures and asking questions and everything. And anyway, so I knew Glenn a little bit beforehand, and he got back to me and said, "Yep, try to make it to the range." He made it, big hit. And then when I contacted him for the petition, he's just like, "Yes, all in, 100%." Got the ball rolling, and it didn't take long, and we got it rolling, so it was good.
Do you think that previous relationship that you had helped with the process, or do you think that he was just like a firearms friendly MP to begin with, that he would have signed this anyway?
He would have signed it anyway. Absolutely. Yeah, he's very knowledgeable, and he's definitely one of our biggest allies in the government for sure.
I'm shocked when you're describing like somebody was happy to see a politician, and it was a conservative politician, not the man with the funny socks and the nice hair.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. It was so funny when he when he showed up. Everybody just kind of gathered around him, and everybody wanted pictures and everything. It was funny too when I showed up. I showed up to the open house, and the range president and his buddies were all sitting, because wasn't that great of a day. It was sprinkling out and whatever. They were all underneath a little bit of a tent, and I heard them talking about some of the different national firearms organizations, right? And one of Paul, the president, one of his friends, said, "What about the CCFR?" And I just happened to walk up at that time, and I was wearing my CCFR shirt. And he goes, "Oh, there's your guy right there." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm not an official representative today, just out enjoying or whatever." And I didn't, I didn't mention that Glenn was coming out, because I didn't want to be like, "Hey, he's coming out," and then a no show and everybody's disappointed or whatever, right?
For sure.
But yeah,
For sure.
I had the range president come up to me while Glenn was there, while he was off taking pictures with everybody else. And first thing he says is, "Why aren't you on my board of directors?" And I'm like, "What?" He says, "I've been trying to get people to come out here for years to the open house." I think it was only the second or third year, but he tried to get people out, and I just happened to shoot off a message, and he showed up. So
I mean, fortuitous timing for sure, but
yeah,
to be able to do that, are you involved in the range now in any kind of a capacity, or are you just still just
no,
going out and shooting targets?
yeah, no official capacity, just going out there and having a good time every time we go out.
See, I think you're missing out on an opportunity there. You could really like drive a gun club and do what you're doing. You had the chance.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I had thought about
But
it, but
yeah, another thing to have to take on, though, I suppose.
yeah, that's
The
right.
uh, the, the actual petitioning process. You said it's all clearly laid out. You managed to get through the petitioning at the course of a shift.
Yeah, I probably wrote it. I want to say in a day. Probably took me 2 days.
I mean
I
that
had everything
that
done.
doesn't seem that onerous compared to a lot of the other interactions that we have with government. Like I'm thinking like how long it takes me to do my taxes.
Mm.
Doing an e-petition in a couple of days doesn't sound like it was that involved.
Yeah, it took me probably a good day just to understand some of the wording, because of course the government has to throw in certain types of wording. There was trying to remember the exact term that was used in one part of the petition when I wrote it. I could look it up, but it was like, what? Doesn't make any sense. But yeah, a little bit of Google search, and then of course there's other petitions. There's over 2,000 petitions that have been done before that. You can look at the form, and you get a good idea of how they want things done.
And then you have to is it once you get the petition written up, you have to get some people to sign it before you can take it to an MP. Is that the process?
Yeah, I had to have 5 people sign on before the MP signed on, and then once they signed on, uh, then it goes into the motions. There's about 6 or 7 different steps it has to pass before it's official. They have to once it's submitted after there's 5 signatories and MP, then they have to read through and make sure the form of it's proper and spelling and punctuation, I imagine, and everything, and make sure that there's no other petitions similar, I think, which I'm not sure now because it seems like we've got 3 petitions now going pretty much for the same thing. So,
well, I'm glad you brought that up because I did find it interesting that we have had 2 petitions come out the same day, both on May the 5th, that were, to me as an untrained person, seem very, very similar. Mm-hmm. And I think there's another one that was come out on May the 12th, if I'm not mistaken, and that one was a democratic process one, so it's a different category of petition.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure the metric that they use to figure all that out, and yeah, to be honest with the government, I'm not sure if left hand knows what the right hand's doing. Right. So.
I think it's a fair bet to say it's not. Once you've got your petition officially open and your MP signed off on it, you've gone through all the legalese with spelling and grammar and everything. It does stay open for a while. It's a couple of months, right?
They have 4 different options, I believe. I think it's 30, 60, 90, and 120 days. And
okay.
For E2341, when Glenn and I spoke, he suggested going for the 60-day because at that time we wanted to get the petition done and get everything completed before they put in the OIC.
Okay, so I mean, it is kind of a race against time at that point because I mean, you're probably like many firearms owners were waiting, counting the days until the Trudeau government dropped an OIC because we all expected. I mean, I shouldn't say all of us, but many firearms owners that are paying attention to what's going on in politics were expecting an OIC to drop probably late last year. I would hazard.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we were kind of, at least for me, I was certainly surprised to see that it dropped as late as it did, being in May. I was expecting it much earlier in the year, like January time frame, maybe around Christmas break sort of thing.
Yeah. I think we all kind of knew in the back of our minds, whether we knew consciously or not, that they tried to take advantage of whatever situation they could at the time to implement it, and it just happened to be the virus.
So with it going, with it closing, the government then has to, I guess your MP, the sponsoring MP, has to table it in the House, read it, and go through that process. Now we have to wait. Now that it's been read, we're waiting on the government to officially respond to it in some capacity.
Yeah, which is 45 days.
Okay, so they have 45 days, and it was just read on the 5th or the 6th. It was a Wednesday a week ago.
I think that's right. Yeah.
I think it was the 6th. I remember watching it because it was the part that struck me was Miss May interrupting to ask if this was relevant to the COVID-19 situation.
Yeah, it's always interesting whenever she opens her mouth.
No, it certainly is. Did you watch the coverage when MP Motz was reading it?
Yeah, I watched it, and then I had it recorded, thinking I would maybe want to watch it again in the future. But after having watched it live, I was like, well, probably just make me upset if I watch it again.
Yeah, I don't usually like listening to Elizabeth May, and that was one more case where if she would have just sat politely and quietly, it would have been done and over in the length of time that it took her to interrupt.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was supposed to be a time-saving measure, and it didn't turn out that way. I don't know, she interrupted a couple times, and then speaker had to interject a couple times, and I think it was pretty frustrating for Glenn, the whole thing. But he did an.
I can understand that.
It was really good.
I think he did a good job, and I think he countered May's points reasonably well. That a lot of this has to do with, like, despite being in a pandemic, we still have a country to govern, and we still have official petitions that need to be tabled and read. So, I mean, to paraphrase, shut up and sit down.
Pretty much.
Which, I mean, I think we could apply that to more MPs. I'd be okay with that if we were to tell more of them to shut up and sit down.
And maybe if they were actually required to answer a question once in a while, that'd be really good.
Well, if they were required to give an actual answer to a question, because you can say the same soundbite over and over, but that doesn't necessarily constitute an answer.
Oh, and that's all they ever do. It's the same talking points. And I expect when they do officially respond to E2341 that I could probably sit down and think for 5 minutes and write up exactly what Blair's going to say.
Yeah, and
It wouldn't be that hard, right? Like these firearms have no place in Canadian society, right? Like, and it'd just be a word salad anyway. But we'll see.
It will be, and I'm sure it's coming, and I'm disappointed by that. I'm sure many firearms owners, many signers of the petition would be disappointed by this. I mean, you sound like you're pretty resigned to, like, we know the outcome of this is the government's response is basically going to be to go pound sand.
Mm-hmm. And I expected that pretty much from day one. That wasn't even the whole idea of the petition. It was more of a awareness thing for people outside the firearms community, for everyday Canadians, right? And I think in that way it was a success for sure, because it's it made the news, and it was out there and being distributed around and talked about, and there's lots of stories on it.
I think having it as the most signed e-petition is certainly a feather in your cap, and for the firearms community as a whole. I think out of the top 5 e-petitions currently, 3 of them are firearms related, and they're all pro-firearms positions.
Mm-hmm.
The measly gun ban petition that the policy event people cooked up was like a few thousand signatures, and we're sitting at 200,000 signatures on a couple petitions.
Yeah, even on E2341, I think we hit 20,000 within a couple days, and that was the total, more than the total of what they got for their whole petition.
Which I think that speaks more to what Canadians care about than the misquoted polls that the Minister of Public Safety and the Prime Minister have been quoting, that the 80% of Canadians are in favor of this, and it's like, it's this useless Angus Reid survey that has 1,500 respondents that are all Angus Forum survey members.
Exactly.
Like, and the questioning in the survey was like, should machine guns be banned in Canada? But they don't mention that it was like, machine guns were already banned since like 77, so we're going to make this double illegal. So it's it was a very misleading poll that Angus Reid conducted, and that's what's being used to get this 80% number now. But I think that having things like E2341 do a much better job of demonstrating what the Canadian public wants, because we've gone through the effort of having the petition and trying to show the government that this is what a large voting bloc of Canadians are interested in. This is what we care about. This is the thing that 3 out of the top 5 petitions are pro-firearms petitions right now.
Mm-hmm. And not only that, but with the wording that was used in the petition, because if you go back and you look on the parliamentary website and you look up the petition, it's filed under democratic process and firearms, right? Mm-hmm. So that was part of the issue that we had, and we thought that would definitely help the petition a lot, that it wasn't just a firearms petition. I mean, essentially that's the core of it, but the bigger picture is that we're looking for democratic process, and every Canadian should be able to get behind that.
I think that's where we can draw in, I hesitate to say educated non-firearms owners, but anyone who is interested in the ability to privately own property should be concerned about how the government regulates our peacefully privately owned property. Exactly. If they're going to take away our guns, when are they going to take away your pools or your cars or your steak knives or your fill in the next thing that they take away in every country where the government has decided to take things away from its citizenry?
Yeah. And right. I've done a couple posts lately, and I'm sure you've seen lots like this where people are like, and I use the analogy of cars, which has been used a lot, right? So if you buy a sports car and all of a sudden the government decides, well, that particular type of sports car, or sports cars in general, we're banning. Well, not all of them, but some of them. We're going to put out a list, but it isn't going to be available to you in real time, and you could go to jail if you don't follow the law, right? Like it's
complete nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. And the fact that they've done this ordering council, I guess for the people in podcast land that haven't been paying attention lately, because part of this is anybody could be a first-time listener and they haven't heard my rant on this. The whole ordering council process circumvents the democratic processes in our country. The whole idea of having the parliament is to have them argue their position and then send it to the Senate for approval, where they argue their positions about a bill, and then it receives royal assent, and then it becomes law. And there's all of this opportunity to get input from the public and have the MPs debated in the House. And by making it a regulatory change through the Ordering Council, there's no opportunity for debate, there's no opportunity for public input. It just becomes regulatory law. It seems very counter to having a democratic country, which I feel like that's a big sticking point for the Trudeau government because of things like Justin's admiration for China's basic dictatorship, as one example.
It's unbelievable.
It is, and I think that this is our opportunity to draw in non-firearms owning Canadians, because it is clearly undemocratic to use regulatory law changes to prescribe the prohibition of our peacefully privately owned property.
Yeah, and they didn't even have to use an OIC. I mean, realistically, they could have done it without. But I think that
I think that the difference there is, had they have gone through Parliament, this would have tied things up even further and would have been further delayed.
Yeah.
That they did this through an Ordering Council, I actually am very much hoping that it galvanizes the firearms community as a voting bloc, so that we can't see any more Liberal minority or majority governments. I don't think that will be the outcome, but I mean, optimistically, I hope that that's the outcome.
Yeah, hopefully the Conservatives can pull it together and get things figured out here with the leadership race. And yeah, I mean, the truth is on our side, and common sense is too. You just have to get the word out there, and there's always going to be that certain segment of Canadian society that hears guns and it's like, nope. But
Yeah,
I don't think there's really, they don't have comparable numbers. It's like you said before with the surveys, right? And they're throwing around that one survey. Why are they throwing that survey around? Because it's the only one that even comes close to what they want it to say. And they had to manipulate
that's how it works, right? Lies, yeah. Damn lies, and statistics.
Yeah, it's just like with all these different radio stations and news organizations. They'll be like, "Oh, should there be a gun ban, or should there be an assault style, firearms ban?" I haven't seen one, and I've seen hundreds. I haven't seen one where it wasn't at least 60% opposing the ban. I haven't seen any.
Well, and I wonder how much of that is the doing of people like you or the CCFR or our podcast, where when these polls and opinion surveys come out that are publicly accessible, that we have massive social media interest in them as soon as they pop up, that sends thousands of interested firearms owners running to go and smash the whatever the opposition position is.
Yeah. There's always a group of people who are willing to go on there, and I see that on my Facebook feed all the time. Somebody will just post a poll and say, "Hit it." That's all you got to say, and people will go in there. But I think in general, if you can gauge the average Canadian's knowledge on the subject versus how they feel about it, there's a disconnect there. We just need to get the truth out there, and maybe focus more on a little bit more on property rights and democratic process. It's stunning to me that they have the support that they do, if you're to believe the recent polls here as far as the Liberals. The numbers.
I do really wonder how much of that is being skewed and how much of that is bought and paid for CBC coverage. I mean, $600 million does probably go a long way in getting you favorable airtime.
Mm-hmm. Not only that, but I mean, some of the guys who are, his name escapes me, but David, I'll have to look it up. He runs Ecos Polling, and if you go on his Twitter feed, it's rabid anti-firearms. It's ridiculous. Like, I don't know how he has any credibility, or that polling company has any credibility when it comes to things like that. But that's the thing we battle on an everyday basis. So,
well, and on the battle front, I do want to ask you about some of the other petitions, but on the battlefront, we've talked a little bit about education and some of the online activism. Do you want to tell me a little bit about the CCFR and the role that you're currently playing with the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights?
Yeah, sure. I'm a field officer, have been for about a year, and I do a lot of unofficial advocacy online. And recently, I got put on as an admin for the CCFR Action Group.
Okay. So that's a new, relatively new Facebook group.
Yeah, it's less than a month old right now. Yeah, and that is what we were talking about before with the when you go on and you vote on these polls or whatever. It's a call to action, a mass call to action for certain topics concerning firearms, just to get people out there and involved.
So you're able to go on, I guess, as the admin, and you're directing a lot of that energy and attention towards different topics, and they're coming out as directives. It's relatively straightforward, copy and paste, go here, do this type instructions.
A lot of it is, yeah. And it's funny because when I first got on there, I was like all gung ho, and I'm posting a couple times a day, and then we left the notifications open, and I would be flooded with notifications and people asking, well, you should do this. Why are you doing it this way? This is, and actually it's funny because that's kind of how I got into it too. I was reading one day, and I saw what Tracy Wilson had posted, and I was like, we need to start having some hashtags, right? Because that's a good way to build awareness about whatever topic we want people to talk about. If it's trending on Twitter, people are going to check it out, right? If you're on Twitter, but me anyway, I know every time I go on there, I'm like, oh, I wonder what's trending. So,
well, I mean, tweets are how we tell people what law is now, right?
Yeah, it's yeah. No, that's not what we meant.
yeah. Pardon my tardiness, but no, I think it's a great thing that you guys are doing more, because I mean, I know I've expressed frustrations multiple times on this show and in real life that like everyone's complaining that nobody's doing something, and then when you finally do something, everyone's complaining you're doing it wrong. But good for you for actually going and doing something. I mean, multiple things now, I guess it seems.
Yeah. I went on and I messaged Tracy. I'm like, let's get some hashtags going. And she's like, would you like to help out? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I got into it. I'm like, oh, what have I gotten myself into?
Yeah, that seems like a great idea. Oh God, what have I done?
Yeah, it seems so easy. And then it's like, because it's a little bit of a different style than what I'm used to. On my own page, I can rant on or say whatever I want, but there's a
yeah. I mean, as a field officer, I have that same, like at a show when I've got my CCFR shirt on, I have to maybe not say things in the way that I would, or I mean, there are certain things that the CCFR. So
instead of telling Bill Blair to go and F-word himself, we tell him to go and fornicate with his hat. It's much more PC.
Yes, exactly. Or like not that I don't support the CCFR, because I do, but like not all of their fine points are my fine points, right?
That's right.
Not that I think that theirs are bad or that they're not like a stepping stone to get where I want to be eventually. But yeah, you sometimes have to just rein it in slightly. Just, un petit peu for our French listeners. All zero of you, except for Robert Smith, maybe.
I guess how are you managing the social media celebrity that you've garnered from this? I imagine that you've gotten a fair bit of attention in the firearms community now as a spokesperson and as a CCFR field officer, now coordinating some of the CCFR action.
Yeah, it's still so strange. I can't even wrap my head around it. I get questions from people. I got a question from a friend, actually a guy I've worked with for over a decade off and on. And he's a firearms guy. He knows his ins and outs. He's knowledgeable, right? And he's asking me questions about his kids getting into shooting. What should I get? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I've got my own ideas, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a machine gun if you can get it, but
exactly. So, of course, I went through the basic safety points. Yeah, just make sure you maybe get him a single shot 22 to begin with, right? Get him used to going out there. You don't have to worry about the trigger discipline quite as much. You can hammer that into them solid before they're turning around after they did a great shot. And it's like, check this out. right? So you can hammer the fundamentals into them, and yeah, 22 you can shoot all day for like $40 and lower recoil and all that stuff. But it's questions like that where I'm like, wow, like I'm just not used to them, I guess. And then I'm getting a lot of questions from people within the firearms community that they have a lot of suggestions and a lot of good suggestions too. It's hard to process all of it. And sometimes I get sent messages that are novels, you know, like
I can imagine.
very involved, and I'm like, I'm gonna look into it. I'll get back to you, and then yeah, it's just I'm not used to all that yet, but yeah, it's been a trip. It's been awesome.
I can only imagine. Firstly, I mean, kudos to you for taking the time to do the petition and to get, at the time, the largest e-petition in Canadian history, and then also now stepping up and helping organize the CCFR and getting the action group under control and moving firearms owners in that unified direction so that we are able to loudly make good points.
Yeah.
Even if we're only yelling on the internet.
Or at least 10% of us, right? Like that's where we're at right now. But I'd say that's 10% more than we normally have.
Yeah, gunnies are awesome, but we're like herding cats sometimes, right? Like to get us all on the same page on some stuff is hard sometimes. It's a challenge, but it's fun.
With the being on the same page, I mean, we touched on it a little bit earlier. There are three different e-petitions. One of them has now surpassed your previous high capacity petition, large capacity petition.
I'd like to call it standard capacity, but
standard.
So you're likely aware of those three petitions. Do you see any downsides to people signing these? Because I've heard complaints and we've seen rumblings in the social media that people don't want to sign another ineffective petition, and I wonder what you, as somebody who's taken the time to go through the petition creation process and seen the outcome and the expected outcome that you have, that we're not going to receive a favorable response from the government, is it worth it to keep petitioning the government to try and do the right thing?
Absolutely. Yep. And the only downside is if you're going to sign, if you only sign one or two, if you're going to sign all three. It's so minimal effort. You go in there, it's done. And the more the better. It's just going to create more awareness of what we're talking about. So, and that's a good thing too.
No, I'm definitely on that page, and we've been encouraging people to sign the three petitions since they've come out.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that if you look at like, you know, the top 10 and even the top 5 petitions and see what they all are, like I would love for the top 5 to be all 5, you know, over 200,000. I mean, 2 million would be nice, but I know we're not going to get that. But like a chunk of them to be all pro firearms and just be like, look, you say that we're a minority, but like we're the ones that get out and vote. And here's the proof that we get out and vote. And we vote in our best interest for the most part.
Yeah. And that's right. Like with petitions, the old rule of thumb is for every person that signs, another 9 or 10 feel that way. Right. So if people are talking about 2 million,
yeah,
we're there. Like that support's there. And I found that with E2341, just to get the message out there. I saw tens of, maybe hundreds of posts a day where it's like, should be 2 million. And I'm like, yeah, it should. Right?
Yeah.
It really should. Well, but if you look at the numbers, and only so many people are on social media, and we try to you know, create some media attention around the petitions, and then that's how we reach the new people, right? Or certain gun shops setting up little kiosks, right?
Yep.
Getting in people that aren't necessarily on social media and don't even know about the petition. There were lots of people as soon as the 2574 and 2576 came out. I had posted something about my petition also. At the time, it was like over 300,000 signatures, right? There were guys trying to sign my petition. It's like, it's closed. Oh, I didn't even know about it. Right? So
I wonder what we can be doing as a firearms community to bridge that gap. I mean, a lot of it right now, I think social media is definitely helping us a lot more. If we had Twitters and Facebooks in 94, 95, I think we may have seen a different outcome with some of those laws, because it is so much easier to reach a large audience now than it was 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, hell, we get like 1,000 people that listen to our drunk asses every week, so.
And we love each and every one of you, especially the 10 of you that work for the RCMP.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's something we can be doing. You mentioned the gun shop kiosks, which I think is a fantastic idea, and I've not seen, and it might be time to ask my local gun shops if I can donate a tablet to the cause.
Mm-hmm.
Is there other avenues that we can be exploring, or other things that we can be doing to get that message broader? Because there are 2 million gun owners in this country. It pains me to see less than 1 million signatures on these petitions.
Yeah, when I first saw 2574 come out, I was sitting in the living room with my wife, and I showed her, and I said, the benchmark for this one, like for mine, once it got close to the end, it was like 175. If we can hit that, that's all. Well, the first thing was to break the record, and after that, it was like counting it down. Is it going to make it? And then it didn't look like it did, and then they did. They added an extra few hundred or whatever, which put it over the top. But
so all those people that finally checked their email.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing too. I think there was well over 30,000 that didn't check their email on mine. So, but now, and that's an advantage for these 3 new petitions to come out. Everything that we learned from mine was applied to these 3. Everything was fresh in everybody's mind, and what we could do to spread the word. So it was just like starting up a warm engine, which was awesome. It'd be nice to get 1 million on that, the biggest one going right now.
Well, I really would like to, and I see no reason not to. Everyone with a restricted PAL should be signing this. I mean, I would like to say every firearms owner should be signing this, and really any Canadian who values property rights. But I know realistically that that's not going to happen, because it's work, however meager amount of work it is to type your name and then click a button in your email. It is work.
Yeah, it's very tedious.
It is going to take a few minutes of someone's day, so I get that that's going to dissuade some people from participating.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are some firearms owners that are not interested in anything beyond hunting or anything beyond their particular discipline or sport, that they don't use a restricted firearm, or they don't use one of the scary black rifles for. So I know we're not going to get everybody on board, but I would really like to get a lot more people on board, because I really see no reason. If you have an RPAL, you should be signing this.
I mean, if you have an RPAL and you don't own any of the guns, like not even one that's banned, I ask, what are you doing with your time? But also, I mean, given that, 10 gauge, 12 gauge, flare guns, 22s, like all the things that Blair says he's not coming after, but they secretly are affected. Because there's a number of hunting rifles and shotguns that are now prohibited. So even the guys without the RPAL are affected by this potentially, because none of this stuff has been cleared up yet.
Mm-hmm. And there was a certain amount of, sorry.
Yeah, he's tweeted about it, but like we said, like that's not law. You can tweet about it all you want. Like I can tweet.
Wait,
I don't.
Twitter's not law?
Yeah, I know. Like, because otherwise I'd be tweeting all day. Like I don't have to pay taxes. Like. Or like I now identify as whatever gets me the best car insurance or allows me to keep my guns.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's law, right?
Yeah.
I suppose.
There was even certain people within the firearms community. It was like total denial. I posted about the 20 millimeter shotgun thing. I had my calipers out and it's zeroed, and I'm like, oh, okay. Cool. I posted and everybody, well, not everybody, but there were certain people, that's not how it's, but there was nothing mentioned about standards. There was nothing mentioned in the OIC about where it's supposed to be measured. What the OIC says, it says, right? So however you want to measure it, however the RCMP wants to measure it, if they decide to, when they.
Well, and I think that'll be whoever gets to go to court first on this and get to figure out when the court decides how to measure it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's really, case law is real law, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just waiting until you have some guy out there with his Mossberg Plinkster in the plastic shell of an AR frame that's apparently now prohibited, just out there plinking for fun with like the grandkids or something like that, right? And then it gets hauled away by the RCMP for having fun with his grandkids, because apparently you need the permission of the crown now to have fun with your grandkids.
It's just surreal.
Definitely needed to please the crown before. It probably still needs to please the crown now.
Crown can suck it.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't encourage that because of hygienic reasons, but okay.
Yeah, I guess social distancing and such, but
So obviously we want everyone to go and sign the new petitions. Obviously, we're very happy with the work that you did, Brad, with 2341 getting the, at the time, the largest, most signed petition. Aside from petitioning the government, are there any other avenues that you think are worth exploring to try and retain our firearms ownership?
The options seem to be getting slimmer by the day. It's just what do we do? Our advocacy and trying to get the word out there and knowledge is probably the single most effective thing we can do, but the clock's ticking.
So I guess for our listeners, if they're not part of that CCFR action group, can anyone join the CCFR action group on Facebook? I guess you obviously need to be on Facebook.
Yeah,
but it's not limited to paid members or anything like that. As long as you're on Facebook, you can join.
That's right. Yeah.
So that'll help spread the word.
Definitely. Yeah, it's more of a coordinated effort. So it's nice, and the more people on there, the better. The more people we have spreading the truth out there, the better. And
I mean, as an admin for the other CCFR page, like there's their regular general page, I can tell you that the people joining that has been insane.
I looked at the numbers. It must have gone up like over 10,000 since the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
I mean, it's good. Like, people are finally waking up, I think. I mean, and I've seen it working the local gun shows in Ontario where, they're recognizing the CCFR, and some of the, to use a derogatory term, fuddier members of the firearms community are finally getting on board with it, and some of them before their guns were threatened, which was nice. I mean, the ones that aren't getting on board, even though their guns are threatened now, I still don't get it. But
it's denial.
But yeah, I mean, we have the 4 boxes that we can use, and I think right now we're using 3 of them.
Right.
Well, I guess the box that I think we could be exploring right now would be the jurors box. Have you seen some of the proposed legal actions by the various orgs, Brad? Have you got an opinion on any of those as yet?
Yeah, I think any chance we have to try to reverse this should be explored. And I don't know, just a cursory look at the gist of what the legal actions are going for. I think there's a chance. It's not frivolous. There's definitely grounds there, as far as I'm concerned. I'm no lawyer, but
you could play one on the internet, though.
Yeah, we do it weekly.
Yeah, I'm all for it. And there's so much support from the community, and you're seeing a lot of gun ranges too getting involved and donating.
I was very happy to see the giant letter from the CCFR. The attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. So that's not the right name of it. I forget. It's escaping me now. But it's been co-signed by like 50 or 60 firearms groups now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the fact that you got the 4 big orgs together was, I mean, insane.
Yeah.
I mean, the 3 of them I don't think was a stretch so much. Like, they're on fairly friendly terms with that 4th one was the one that made me think that anything is possible again.
Yeah, it was a borderline miracle.
Yeah.
That's good. It's definitely galvanized the community, right? It's what we need. We need everybody to get on the same page. And like you were saying before, with maybe personally, we all have little different ideas on how things should be done or what we need to focus on. We need to put those differences aside and just get behind it.
Yeah. And in any way that is, like, you know, if you're good at the social media and have reach, use that. If you've got a crap ton of money but you're terrible at everything else, like, just become a member of all of those groups or put it in trust to go to things, donate, you know, however you can, you should be helping. You know, everyone's got their strong suit and play to it.
Yeah. And people just need to get out there and just do it. That's one thing I've learned over the last probably year and a half. Just swing for the fences, right? Like just a little side story here. I decided I want to shoot CRPS competitions, right? And I didn't even have a rimfire at the time. I'm like, well, okay, well, I'll research and I'll figure all this out. And I'm like, sure be cool to be a sponsored shooter. Yeah, a little, you know, bucket list thing or whatever, right? So we've got an indoor range just outside of town, Canadian Gun Hub. And I was up at work and I just emailed Rocky, the owner. And I was like, hey, this is me and I support you and all this stuff. And, you know, if you could just be my ammo sponsor, that'd be awesome. And then I'll plug you everywhere I go. He's like, oh, we'd be honored.
Well, let's make sure you earn your money. What's the name of the shop again?
Canadian Gun Hub, and it's in Dunmore, Alberta.
Perfect. So if you're near Dunmore, Alberta, what's that, Medicine Hat area? Yeah,
that's just a few kilometers outside of the Hat.
All right. So if you're in that awful part of Alberta, no, I'm kidding. I like that part of Alberta. You should check out the Canadian Gun Hub and let them know Brad sent you, because Brad's getting ammo out of this, and it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But no, I mean, like, I think that is a great message. I mean, we certainly did that where, you know, everyone was like, oh, if you think you could do it better, then just do it. And we did, and we started our own shooting league. Yeah, it's not always as easy as it sounds, but sometimes that's what you got to do. And yeah, people just need to just get off their butt and get out and just start doing some of this stuff, right?
Yeah,
right. Get off their butt and type in that petition form and hit the send button.
Yeah.
I was totally one of those people where it's like, you know, I'll support or whatever, but I'm not gonna start anything. Like, where do I start? What do I do? Right? And then you just come up with ideas and just swing for the fences. I again, up at work, I was thinking,
man, I hope your boss does not listen to this.
I'm not working right now. I don't have to worry about it. But yeah, after I did my first competition, CRPS, I was like, that was really cool. And I learned so much. And I thought, crazily, I'm going to write a book. So I did.
Nice.
I wrote a book. And then I thought, well, I should be able to sell about 5 copies, because if you're gonna try to make money or sell books, I mean, CRPS is fairly popular across Canada, but outside of it, absolutely not. And some of that stuff with NRL 22 or whatever, I suppose there's market or whatever. But I thought, let's try to be realistic here. I'm going to try to pare this whole book down to an article, and then I'll pitch it. So I got a hold of Dave Partnan, who I know, and I was like, sent it to him. I'm like, hey, what do you think of this? And he's like, that's cool. I'm sending it to Doug at High Capacity Magazine. I'm like, what? He says, yeah. And then Doug got back to me. He says, yeah, I'll probably run it. Got some pictures. I'm like, you betcha.
That's fantastic. I really wish that we had more firearms owners that would put in that bit of effort to write the article or to contact the
like even a tenth of that effort.
Well, I mean, like, not everybody's got to be Brad. You don't have to like be best friends with one of the coolest MPs in Alberta. You don't have to write the petition. You don't have to. But I mean, like, go be the sponsored shooter. Go say nice things. Go be a field officer for CCFR. Pick one of those things that's some investment, and go and do the thing and help spread the good word of the John Moses Browning Club.
Yeah, or even just, you know, help out at your local club for running, you know, ladies' days or open days for non-POW holders, or like junior cadet shooting program, whatever it is to get new people into the sport. You know,
awesome point. Like getting new shooters in bumps the numbers, right? If we were 10 million strong, this wouldn't be happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, the demographic that we need to target is the Karens of the world. You know, the ones that want to go talk to the manager. That's the one that we need to be on our side, because they're active. They're talking to the managers, right? Like they're on the social media, they're tweeting, they're, you know, hashtagging, and they're the most vocal, and people listen to them.
And the same thing when they're happy about something too, then they got to let
exactly
know, which is like perfect.
So like if they don't like guns, they're going to tweet the shit out of it. If they go on a good fun excursion, you know, with the girls and have a lot of fun, and then, you know, drink white wine or whatever after, and they'll tweet that they had a great time and that everyone else should go and do this. And then they won't be anti-gun.
That's right.
I mean, you can't get everyone, but
I'll take a few more than we had yesterday. That'll work for me.
Yeah.
So
those
if it you know, instead of if it saves just one life, it's if we get just one new shooter out of it, it was all worth it.
Yeah, just takes a little bit of effort, and sometimes a lot of effort, but man, just inviting people out to the range is, I don't know, and I'm sure people have had those experiences where you take somebody out and it's like, nah, it's not for me. Hasn't happened to me though.
Never.
Yeah, I've never had anybody have a bad time going shooting, but
nope.
Yeah, I've had people that are less enthusiastic, but they're still enthusiastic. Like they still had a good time. They're like, yeah, I don't know if I'd go get my gun license, but like I see no problem with this, and I would do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And other people are like, oh man, that is amazing. That is the best thing I've ever done. Mm-hmm. How do I get one of these?
Yeah, and then with the current situation, with there was that little time frame there with the coronavirus and everything that was going on, and all of a sudden everybody was asking everybody that they knew that had firearms, how do I get a license?
Yeah,
and and now it's starting to open up again too for the courses, which is great. But that definitely.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess our local club opens this evening for trap.
Nice.
So I'm hoping I can get out there in the next couple of days, because unfortunately, Ontario was one of those places where gun ranges were shut down for far too long.
Yeah, I think it might be time to move to Medicine Hat. Even that sounds preferable to Ontario.
Yeah, especially if you get the whole Wexit thing going.
Yeah.
One step at a time.
That's right, man.
I mean, not that I want to split apart this great nation of ours, but if we're going to, and you guys are going to actually allow me to keep private property, I'm in.
Yeah,
welcome to come, okay. More the barrier.
I dig it. All right, let's find out where we can find everybody to stay in touch. Brad, you got some social media places where people can find you if they want to read your books or your articles or follow your sponsored shooting career?
Yeah, you bet. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and if you just search my name, I'll come up. So it's pretty straightforward. My last name's a bit of a tongue twister, but
don't worry, I'm gonna.
Yeah, that's the trick in finding you, right? That's how you.
That's right.
So, cheating for our listeners, the episode title is going to be Brad's first and last name, so you don't have to try and spell out Menisiak.
You got it.
Yay! There, look at that, practicing it before the show paid off.
Yep.
Yeah, so you just gotta do that while you're watching or I guess while you're listening to the podcast, because it'll be in the podcast title. So, or check the show notes. You can always check the show notes. Gavin, where can everybody find you on the internet?
You can find me on the gram at urbex_GTA. But for any of those sponsors out there that can't find Brad on the internet, just send it to the show and we'll make sure that he gets it. We'll only take a 10% fee off the top.
Perfect.
All right. For listeners who want to send your feedback, I would love to read it on the show. Depending on the content of your feedback, I may or may not make fun of it. You can send those emails to feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. And if you want to sponsor the show, either as a professional shooter or a professional drinker, you can do that through the feedback link, feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. I have to apologize to Rod Giltaka. The rule is one CCFR person per episode plus Gavin. So we've got Gavin, we've got Brad. That means no Rod. So Rod, next week, buddy, you're in.
Well, unless Ian's on again.
Well, unless Ian's on again. That's
Yeah.
right. 'Cause then the BC rule applies. Only one person from BC at a time.
Yeah.
I can only
Well, and then
stand to
that's
hear how pretty that province is so much. All right. For all of our listeners out there in podcast land, I'd like to remind you that you are the true North, strong and free, and go sign the petitions.